There's a voice in your head that never stops talking. From the moment you wake until the moment you fall asleep, and even in your dreams it chatters endlessly. Commenting, judging, analyzing, remembering, predicting, worrying, planning. This voice narrates your entire existence, spinning stories about who you are, what happened, what might happen, what should happen, what shouldn't have happened. And you believe it. You believe every word. This is the trap. Not that you think, but that you've become so identified with your thinking that you can no longer tell where thought ends and reality begins. You've mistaken the map for the territory, the description for the actual thing, the mental representation for direct experience. And in this confusion, suffering blooms like weeds in untended ground. Let me be clear, thinking itself is not the enemy. The mind is a remarkable tool, capable of extraordinary things. Language, mathematics, technology, art, all emerge from the thinking mind. The problem isn't that you think. The problem is that you can't stop thinking. And more critically, you believe that the voice in your head is you, that its constant commentary is somehow necessary for your survival, for your identity, for your very existence. But watch closely. Right now, as you read these words, notice the voice interpreting them. Notice how it's already forming opinions, agreeing or disagreeing, connecting these ideas to past experiences, projecting ahead to what might come next. The voice never rests. It's compulsive, automatic, relentless. And here's what you've probably never noticed. Most of your suffering doesn't come from your actual circumstances. It comes from what you think about your circumstances. It comes from the stories the voice tells, the interpretations it layers onto raw experience, the meanings it constructs, the fears it projects, the regrets it replays endlessly like a broken record. Think about it. How often have you suffered over something that never actually happened? How many hours, days, years have you lost to worrying about possibilities that existed only in your imagination? How much pain have you created by replaying past events, rewriting them in your mind, punishing yourself with should-haves and could-haves and if-onlys? The event itself is over. It came, it went, it's done. But the thinking mind keeps it alive. It resurrects it, dissects it, amplifies it, tortures you with it. And you, identified with this process, experience it as if it's happening now, as if the past is still present, as if the future is already here. This is the trap of thinking. The mind creates a parallel reality made entirely of thought, and you live in that reality more than you live in this one. You're here, physically, but mentally you're somewhere else, lost in memory, lost in anticipation, lost in fantasy, lost in fear. The present moment, the only moment that actually exists, slips by unnoticed while you're trapped inside your head. Consider a simple example. You're walking in nature, surrounded by beauty, trees, sky, bird song, the feel of air on your skin. But are you experiencing any of this? Or is the voice in your head talking, planning tomorrow's meeting, replaying yesterday's argument, composing the perfect response you didn't think of in the moment, worrying about finances, relationships, health? The beauty is here, available, free, but you're not here. You're trapped inside thought. And the tragedy is, you don't even realize you're trapped. The trap is so complete, so all-encompassing, that you mistake it for normal. You think this is just how life is, a constant stream of mental noise, an endless parade of thoughts demanding your attention, pulling you into the past and future, creating problems where none exist, manufacturing suffering out of thin air. But here's what the thinking mind does most insidiously. It creates a character, a sense of self, and then it defends this character at all costs. It tells stories about who you are, what you're capable of, what you deserve, what threatens you, what you need. And these stories become your identity. You become a collection of thoughts about yourself, a mental construct held together by narrative and memory. The mind says, I am successful, or I am a failure. I am loved, or I am alone. I am confident, or I am anxious. And you believe it. You identify with these labels, these descriptions, these mental categories. And then you suffer when reality doesn't align with the story. You suffer when the narrative is threatened. You suffer trying to maintain an image that exists only in thought. Watch how this works. Someone criticizes you. They say something that contradicts your self-image, and immediately the mind reacts. It defends. It attacks. It creates elaborate arguments. It replays the interaction obsessively. It plans revenge or seeks validation elsewhere. Hours, days, weeks of mental energy consumed by protecting a thought-based identity that was never real to begin with. Or you make a mistake, a simple human error, but the mind doesn't let it pass. It creates a story. I'm incompetent. I always mess things up. Everyone will think I'm stupid. I'll never succeed. One small event becomes a catastrophe through the amplifying power of thought. The mind takes a moment and stretches it into a narrative of personal inadequacy that can haunt you for years. This is how suffering is manufactured, not through direct experience, but through interpretation. Not through what is, but through what the mind says about what is. The thinking mind is like a lens that distorts everything it touches, coloring raw experience with judgment, meaning, story, fear. And because you're identified with this mind, because you believe you are these thoughts, you can't see the distortion. You think you're seeing reality when you're actually seeing your thoughts about reality. You think you're responding to life when you're actually responding to your mental interpretation of life. And these are not the same thing. The mind is particularly skilled at creating suffering through comparison. It compares you to others, to your past self, to your ideal self, to societal standards, to impossible expectations. And in these comparisons, you always come up short. Someone is smarter, richer, more attractive, more successful. Your past self was better, or your future self should be better. You should be different than you are. And in this constant comparison, contentment becomes impossible. But notice, comparison only exists in thought. In direct experience, there is no comparison. There is simply what is. A tree doesn't compare itself to other trees. A river doesn't wish it were an ocean. But the human mind compares endlessly, and in doing so creates a perpetual state of inadequacy and dissatisfaction. The thinking mind also excels at creating suffering through resistance. Something happens that you don't like, and immediately the mind argues with reality. This shouldn't be happening. This isn't fair. Why me? This is terrible. I can't handle this. And in this mental resistance, suffering multiplies. The actual circumstance might be uncomfortable, challenging, even painful. But the suffering, the real suffering, comes from the mind's refusal to accept what is. Pain is unavoidable. It's part of being alive in a body, in a world of constant change. But suffering is optional. Suffering is what the thinking mind adds to pain, through resistance, through story, through identification. The pain of a physical injury is one thing. The suffering of, why did this happen to me? This ruins everything. I'll never recover. My life is over, is something else entirely. That's the mind creating suffering where only pain existed. And perhaps most insidiously, the thinking mind creates suffering through its constant projection into the future. It lives in a state of perpetual anxiety, imagining all the things that could go wrong, all the ways you might fail, all the disasters that might occur. This future exists only in thought, but the fear is experienced now. You suffer in the present moment for events that haven't happened and may never happen. The mind believes this worrying is useful, that by anticipating problems you can prevent them. But most of what you worry about never occurs. And for the small percentage that does, the worrying beforehand doesn't help. It only means you've suffered twice, once in imagination and once in reality. The thinking mind, in its attempt to protect you, actually creates most of your suffering. Now, let's go deeper into understanding how this trap operates in the subtle corners of your daily life, because the mind is cunning. It doesn't just create obvious suffering. It creates layers upon layers of subtle dissatisfaction that you've learned to accept as normal. Consider how you relate to time. The thinking mind is obsessed with time. It's always pulling you into the past or pushing you into the future. You're rarely actually here, in this moment, because the mind is busy narrating what happened or predicting what will happen. And in this constant temporal displacement, you miss your life. You're eating a meal, but you're not tasting it. You're thinking about the conversation you had earlier or the work you need to do later. You're with someone you love, but you're not present with them. You're replaying old grievances or planning future discussions. The person is here. You're here physically, but mentally you've vacated the moment. You're trapped in the mind's timeline, and the timeline exists only in thought. This creates a particular form of suffering that most people don't even recognize as suffering. It's a vague sense of absence, of not quite being here, of life happening around you while you're somewhere else. It's the feeling of time slipping away, of looking back and wondering where the days went, where the years went. They went by while you were lost in thought, while the mind was busy being anywhere but now. The thinking mind also creates suffering through its addiction to problems. Have you noticed how the mind is always looking for problems to solve? Even when everything is actually fine, the mind scans for potential issues. It's like a problem-seeking missile, constantly searching for something to worry about, something to fix, something to analyze. And if it can't find a real problem, it invents one. It creates hypothetical scenarios. What if this happens? What if that person thinks this? What if I said the wrong thing? What if tomorrow brings disaster? The mind generates endless streams of potential problems, most of which will never materialize, and you suffer through each one as if it were real. This is because the mind has confused survival with suffering. In our evolutionary past, the mind that worried, that planned, that anticipated danger was the mind that survived. The constant vigilance, the perpetual scanning for threats, kept our ancestors alive in genuinely dangerous environments. But you're not living in that environment anymore. The threats are different, mostly psychological rather than physical. But the mind still operates as if a tiger might appear at any moment. So it creates psychological tigers. It turns social situations into survival threats. It transforms uncertainty into danger. It makes simple decisions feel like life or death choices. And you live in a constant state of low-level anxiety, the mind always on alert for problems that exist primarily in its own projections. Another way the thinking mind creates suffering is through its relationship with desire. The mind is constantly generating desires, telling you that happiness lies in the next achievement, the next possession, the next experience, the next relationship. When I get this, then I'll be happy.
When I achieve that,
then I'll be content. When this situation changes, then I'll have peace. But notice what happens when you get what you wanted. There's a brief moment of satisfaction, and then the mind is off again, generating new desires, new targets, new conditions for happiness. The goalpost keeps moving. You're on a treadmill of desire, always running toward a future state of satisfaction that never quite arrives because as soon as you reach one destination, the mind has already identified the next one. This creates a suffering of perpetual incompleteness, a sense that something is always missing, that you're not quite there yet, that life will be better when something changes. But the something that needs to change is not your circumstances. It's your relationship with the present moment. It's the mind's habit of projecting happiness into the future instead of recognizing the completeness that's available now. The thinking mind also creates suffering through judgment. It judges everything. Every person, every situation, every experience gets categorized as good or bad, right or wrong, desirable or undesirable. And in this constant judgment, you separate yourself from life. You create a division between what you accept and what you reject, what you move toward and what you move away from. But life doesn't come in neat categories. Life is messy, complex, contradictory. The same situation that brings joy can also bring challenge. The same person who frustrates you also teaches you. The same experience that feels difficult might also be transformative. But the judging mind tries to split everything into simple categories, and you suffer when life refuses to fit into these mental boxes. Moreover, the mind judges you most harshly of all. It has a running commentary on your performance, your appearance, your worthiness. It compares you to impossible standards, to carefully curated images of others, to idealized versions of who you should be. And in this constant self-judgment, you develop an adversarial relationship with yourself. You become your own harshest critic, living with an internal voice that would never speak to anyone else the way it speaks to you. This self-judgment creates a particular kind of suffering, a feeling of never being good enough, of always falling short, of being fundamentally flawed. And the irony is, this judgment doesn't motivate improvement. It creates paralysis. It drains energy. It keeps you stuck in patterns of self-criticism rather than moving forward with compassion and awareness. Now, let's explore how the thinking mind creates suffering through its relationship with identity. The mind constructs an elaborate story of who you are, built from memories, beliefs, experiences, and cultural conditioning. This story becomes your identity, the sense of me that you defend and protect. But this identity is fundamentally limiting because it's based on the past. The mind says, I am someone who always struggles with this, or I'm not the type of person who can do that, or this is just who I am. And these statements, these identity claims, become self-fulfilling prophecies. You live within the boundaries of the story the mind has created, unable to step beyond it because you believe this story is who you fundamentally are. But watch what happens when you act outside this story. The mind becomes uncomfortable. It generates anxiety. It pulls you back with thoughts like, this isn't me. What am I doing? I can't do this. The identity story wants to maintain itself, to keep you within familiar patterns, even when those patterns create suffering. This is why change can feel so difficult. Not because change itself is hard, but because the thinking mind is invested in maintaining the identity story it's constructed. Every change, every new behavior, every step outside familiar patterns threatens this story. And the mind creates suffering, discomfort, fear to pull you back into the known. You suffer, Not because you can't change, but because the mind's attachment to its story of who you are creates resistance to change. And you believe this resistance is a reflection of reality, rather than seeing it for what it is. The mind, defending its own construction. The thinking mind also creates suffering through its addiction to being right. It takes positions, forms opinions, constructs arguments, and then defends these mental positions as if they were matters of life and death. You've probably experienced this, the feeling of needing to prove you're right, the discomfort when someone challenges your view, the mental energy consumed by defending your position. But why? Why does it matter so much to be right? Because the mind has tied being right to survival, to worthiness, to identity. If you're wrong, the mind interprets this as a threat. Not a threat to your actual well-being, but a threat to the mental construct of who you are. And so, you suffer. You suffer defending positions that don't really matter. You suffer in conflicts that could dissolve if you weren't so attached to being right. You suffer maintaining arguments long after they've ceased to serve any useful purpose. This creates suffering in relationships particularly, because being right becomes more important than connection, more important than understanding, more important than love. The mind would rather be right and alone than wrong and connected. And you pay the price for this in damaged relationships, in walls built between you and others, in the loneliness that comes from prioritizing mental positions over human connection. Let's also examine how the thinking mind creates suffering through its relationship with emotions. When an emotion arises, the mind immediately begins to think about it. It creates stories around it, analyzes it, judges it, tries to explain it, tries to change it. And in this process of thinking about emotion, you separate yourself from the direct experience of the emotion. Instead of simply feeling sadness, you think, "Why am I sad? I shouldn't be sad. What's wrong with me? This sadness means something terrible. I need to fix this." Instead of allowing anger to move through you, you think, "I shouldn't be angry. Anger is bad. But I have every right to be angry. They were wrong. I need to hold on to this anger." The thinking mind takes a simple, temporary emotional experience and turns it into a prolonged psychological drama. This creates suffering because emotions, when allowed to simply be felt without mental interference, pass relatively quickly. They're like weather patterns, arising, peaking, and dissipating. But when the mind gets involved, when it starts thinking about the emotion, analyzing it, creating stories around it, the emotion becomes stuck. It cycles endlessly in thought, gaining momentum, creating elaborate narratives that keep you trapped in emotional states long after the initial cause has passed. You end up suffering not from the emotion itself, but from your thoughts about the emotion. You suffer from the story the mind creates around the feeling. You suffer from the resistance to the emotion, from the judgment of it, from the need to understand it or change it or justify it. The actual feeling would pass, but the thinking about the feeling can last for hours, days, even years. The thinking mind also creates suffering through its relationship with attention. Your attention is constantly fragmented, pulled in 1,000 directions by the thinking mind. You're doing one thing, but thinking about another. You're here physically, but mentally somewhere else. This fragmentation creates a subtle but pervasive form of suffering, a sense of never being fully engaged, never being fully present, never being fully alive. You're in a conversation, but you're thinking about what you're going to say next. You're working, but you're thinking about what you'd rather be doing. You're trying to rest, but you're thinking about all the things you should be doing. The mind hijacks your attention, pulling it away from direct experience and into thought, and you live in a state of constant distraction. This creates a particular kind of exhaustion, not the exhaustion of physical effort, but the exhaustion of never being able to settle, of never being able to fully engage with anything because the mind is always pulling you elsewhere. It's like trying to watch 10 movies simultaneously. Nothing is fully experienced. Nothing is fully enjoyed. Nothing receives your complete attention. And in this fragmentation, you miss the richness of life. You miss the depth available in single moments of complete attention. You miss the satisfaction of being fully engaged with what's in front of you. You miss the peace that comes from unified attention rather than scattered mental activity. Now, here's the beautiful thing. None of this is happening to you. You're doing it to yourself through identification with the thinking mind. The mind creates these patterns, generates these thoughts, spins these stories. But you are not the mind. You are the awareness in which the mind appears, the consciousness that witnesses the thinking without being consumed by it. So, what is the way out of this trap? Not through more thinking. You cannot think your way out of the trap of thinking. The solution is not to have better thoughts or more positive thoughts, or to argue with your thoughts. The solution is to recognize that you are not your thoughts, to see that there is awareness prior to thinking, a space in which thoughts arise and pass away, a consciousness that exists independent of the mental noise. This awareness, this consciousness, is what you truly are, not the voice in your head, not the stories, not the character the mind has constructed. These are phenomena appearing in awareness, like clouds passing through the sky. The clouds are not the sky, and your thoughts are not you. When you realize this, when you experience even a glimpse of yourself as the awareness in which thinking occurs rather than as the thinker, something shifts. Thoughts still arise, the voice still talks, but you're no longer trapped by it. You're no longer at its mercy. You can observe thought without being consumed by it. You can notice the mind creating suffering without believing its stories. This is not about achieving a state of no thought. The mind will continue to think. That's its nature. But you don't have to identify with every thought. You don't have to follow every mental story. You don't have to believe the voice. You can simply be aware that thinking is happening, like you're aware of sounds in the environment. Present, but not all-consuming. Noticed, but not identified with. In this space of awareness, suffering begins to dissolve, not because your circumstances change, but because you're no longer adding layers of mental suffering to whatever is happening. You're no longer trapped in thought-created parallel realities of past and future. You're here, present, awake to direct experience rather than lost in interpretation. The practice is simple but profound. Begin to notice your thoughts, not to judge them, not to stop them, but simply to notice them. There's a thought about the past. There's a thought about the future. There's a judgment. There's a worry. There's a plan. Just notice. In the noticing, you create a small gap between awareness and thought, and in that gap, freedom lives. Watch the mind create its dramas. Watch it generate problems. Watch it tell stories about who you are. Watch it judge and compare and resist. Watch it all with gentle curiosity, without getting pulled into the content of the thoughts. You're not trying to have different thoughts. You're simply recognizing that you are not the thoughts. You are the awareness, witnessing the thoughts. This recognition changes everything. The thoughts don't stop, but they lose their power over you. The mind continues its habitual patterns, but you're no longer enslaved by them. You can use thought when it's useful, when it serves a practical purpose, and let it go when it's creating unnecessary suffering. You begin to live more from presence than from thought, more from direct experience than from mental interpretation, more from awareness than from the conditioned patterns of the mind. And in this shift, Suffering doesn't necessarily disappear entirely, but your relationship with it transforms completely. You see suffering arise. You see the mind create its stories, but you're no longer fully convinced by them. You're no longer trapped. There's space around the experience. There's awareness that holds it all without being consumed by it. And in that space, in that awareness, you find a peace that doesn't depend on the mind being quiet, that doesn't depend on circumstances being perfect, that doesn't depend on anything external at all. This is the way out of the trap, not through force, not through struggle, not through trying to control the mind, but through recognition, through seeing clearly that you are not the thinking mind, you are the vast awareness in which the mind appears. And in that recognition, the trap loses its grip. The mind will still think, thoughts will still arise, the voice will still chatter, but you, the real you, the awareness that has always been here beneath the noise, remains free, untouched, untrapped, simply witnessing the play of thought without being lost in it, without mistaking the mental drama for the totality of who you are. The trap of thinking is real, but it's not inescapable. In fact, you were never truly trapped. You only believed you were. And now, with awareness, with recognition, with the simple practice of witnessing thought rather than identifying with it, you can step out of the trap that was always made of nothing more substantial than belief. You are not your thoughts. You never were. And in knowing this, truly knowing this, not as a concept but as a lived experience, you reclaim the freedom that was always yours. The mind continues its dance, but you, the awareness, remain still, spacious, free. This is not a distant goal. This is available now, in this moment, in any moment you choose to stop, to notice, to recognize that beneath the endless thinking you exist as pure awareness, thought-free, story-free, suffering-free. The trap of thinking has no walls except the ones you believe are there. See through the illusion, and you're free. Not someday, not when the mind finally quiets. Now, always now, because awareness, your true nature, has never been trapped at all.